What's going on, everybody? Glory be to God. I wanted to start this video off kind of giving everybody like a idea of like the reality, like the seriousness of the spirit world, and kind of like give you that through my testimony, like my story, and you know, give you a idea of how I kind of turned to God and how things started to change for me. And it wasn't always a normal, type of a move where one day, you're living your own life and then the next day you're walking with God and everything's changed. The the walk with God, though it had a redirection, it wasn't always, I wasn't always the type of person to just be, you know, uh, walking with God and going to church and doing everything I was supposed to do. I was still living my own life, and even since a child, I always believed. I always, my dad was a pastor. He preached. My grandfather was, and so I had a foundation on Jesus and on God and a belief, and I always did believe, but I was the type of person like everybody else in the world. I just wanted to live my life. I was evil, not along the lines of like some people might consider evil, like a Jeffrey Dahmer type of evil. Was, God showed me evil was me just wanting to go out and party and play games and do what I wanted to do, whether it was sleeping with women or, sexual perversions, the sexual immorality type of lifestyle. That was the life that I was pursuing. And I thought that I could just wake up one day and do what I wanted to do. And as long as at the end of the night I went and told God, "Oh, Lord, forgive me, everything was going to be okay and I was going to make it to heaven." But that's demonic. You're not going to heaven. And I'll just be 100% real with everybody out there that's listening. If you're not changing your walk and you don't have that repentance attitude where you're not actually repenting is not just saying sorry. You need to change your walk. Doesn't mean you're not going to slip up and make mistakes, but you need to change your walk and move differently in life. You can't keep on doing what you want to do in life and thinking that it's going to be okay and that the Lord is just going to say, he's doing the best he could. The walk's not easy. And God said that it was going to be a hard walk for a reason. Because this type of walk is you got to have a lot of diligence in it. You have to have a lot of determination involved with this walk. That's where the belief comes in. The faith comes in that you're going to make it and that this is what God wants me to do and how he wants me to live. It's a different, mindset. You got to renew your mind. So without, babbling on any longer about, my past and, let me kind of get to the actual reason for this video, which was, talking about my testimony, my walk. So I guess where to start would be, me and my woman, Kelly, my wife now, been married for 6 years now. Thank the Lord for that. We've been together for over 15 years and we wasn't always married, obviously. And we did certain things, made certain mistakes everybody does in our relationship, and had a child and all these things. And I guess we had a lot of different, weird things happening in our life. There was a lot of demonic presence, I guess, involved is the best way I could put it. We were being I don't want to say targeted. I mean, we all are, but you know, it's a spiritual war. We all going through that spiritual war. Um, so she had a lot of, you know, she was dealing with astral projection, and she was dealing with, you know, what medical term I guess is sleep paralysis, they call it. And she would have nights or times where she was sleeping where one time she told me where our daughter was asleep and she heard her crying and she couldn't get up. She couldn't move. She was stuck. She couldn't move. But she heard her crying. So she wanted to get her up and help her. And she didn't really hear much. She heard a lot of, it was more of a presence. It was more of a feeling, you know, how you kind of just feel something's off. And besides the fact that you're not able to move. And it wasn't until she finally was able to get up, but before she was able to get up, she heard clearly distinct somebody telling her, go get your baby, B, you know, Bish. And at that moment she was released, she got up. You know, there's a lot of weird things that was happening. You know, we got photos. There's a lot of weird entities going on. Different, you know, activity going on in our house where we lived at the time. Toys going off on their own. There's the toy that went off. We shut off. It didn't even have batteries one time. It went off. Toilet paper rolls literally lined up from my bathroom all the way out from my bathroom down the hallway, all the way unrolled perfectly right underneath the kitchen table. And just happened to be that was where one of the pictures we actually got a picture of the entity. One time when my wife was taking a picture, she actually caught it. And so, you know, we were kind of, you know, and at that time we were still living our life. We wasn't thinking about, you know, God or praying on the Lord, or, you know, we say that we believed in God, but that wasn't what we were how we were living our lives. You know, it was contrary to that. You know, and then in that moment after that, you know, we always still went out partying. One time we went out partying, we got really, really drunk, all of us, and we got into an argument earlier that night, so she kind of split off with friends, and then I kind of did the same thing. Got into it with this guy at the club, whatever, got into a big argument, da-da-da-da-da. And then afterwards, I'm waiting for my boy to come out, whatever, I don't remember much. All I know is I got sucker punched, and from what I was told, knocked out. And somebody told me that they found me, put me in my car, drove me to one of my boys' house. I was over there for a while, and I'm like, man, I don't want to be over here. I'm trying to go home, and they didn't want to let me drive over here too drunk, and you know, concussion, and I just wanted to go to bed. They told me I couldn't go to sleep, so I said, you know what? I'm just going. Hey, I'm gonna go grab something from my car. Let me get my keys. I'll be back. All right, make sure you come back. And I just left. And then on my way home, I was just angry, you know, between the fighting argument with my woman and what happened, I guess, that night out. You know, I guess a lot of mixed feelings. And of course, me being drunk, I just felt, I don't know. What was weird was I decided to take all those frustrations out on God in that moment. And I told him, I blamed him and said, oh, you forsake me and F you. You don't care about me. I don't care about you. And I had beads on my neck and I tore the beads off. Boom, tore them off. Beads scattered everywhere, through the cross, down the floor. Last thing I remember, I was out. He put me out after that. Boom. Next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. I woke up in the hospital, curtains behind, white curtains, and couldn't move. My leg all tore up. Got a tube down, you know, to help me breathe and all that, and inside down my esophagus and all that. I'm yanking everything out and freaking out. Alarms going off. Nurse coming and she said, "Oh, it's okay, you know, calm down, everything all right." I'm like, "What's going on?" She said, "You in an accident." I'm like, "Oh man." That's why my leg all broke up. So I calmed down a slight bit, and just laid there and dealt with all that. And next thing I remember, after my surgery, a lady come in the room, and she wasn't my nurse. I don't know who the lady was. It was just a middle-aged lady, and she came in my room and she just stared at me for a little while, and she said, how you doing? And I kind of acknowledged that she was there and said, hey, how's it going or whatever. And she said, I needed to give you something. And I said, okay. And then she handed me my cross. And so in my head, I'm like, all right, that's my cross. I know it is. But like I said, I don't remember nothing from the accident. I don't remember anything at the time. Like, everything's foggy. I remember my whole life, but just not anything prior to that accident that night. So when she gives me the cross, I said, okay. I left it on my food tray, and I'm just laying in the bed, and I'm looking at the TV, and then I couldn't take my eyes off it because something about it, I kept saying, why is it, I know what the cross is, but where it came from, but why, there's meaning to it. So I just sat there for a while, and I thought, and I kept thinking, and then it came to me, it just dawned on me. It came out of nowhere. It was like you see in a movie where a flashback comes, and it was just a glimpse of the flashback. The only part of the flashback I remember was the beads scattering everywhere after I snatched it off my neck. And in that moment, I just broke down and cried, and I remember saying, oh my God. Because I remember it was like he put in my head that moment what happened and what I did. And that was the only part of the whole accident I remembered was that moment where the cross came from. And the lady had said when she gave it to me, she said, it was important to you because it took a few of us to get it out of your hand. You was holding it really tight in your hand. And I broke down off of that because for me, it was crazy because I threw it, after the accident. Was like, that was all I guess I had left. And I don't know how it got back in my hand. I have no idea how it got back in my hand because I was out cold. And so I kept it, I had it after that. And then, I ain't never seen a lady. And then I asked, I wanted to talk to the lady, but they was acting like I didn't know, like the lady didn't exist. Like, that's not your nurse. We don't know who you're talking about, who came and talked to you. But I never seen her again. Never seen the lady again. So meanwhile, my sister, she didn't know about the accident yet, but she was having a dream that night. And the dream was about a lady had came to her and told her, there's a demonic presence. There's something evil that's after your brother. And you need to warn him, but you have to be careful because if it sees your presence and if it sees you do that, knows that you've done this, it will come after you and your family. So she said in her dream, it was weird. Like I was off getting married. And when I was off getting married, it was at like the same top of the hill that she seen when we were kids, where our brother got buried at a funeral, when we seen it from the bottom of the hill. And she said it was the same place. And she said she called for me and she was yelling for me, trying to say, hey, you gotta be careful. And she was like, me thinking that, knowing each other, we always joke around. I laughed it off and just said, hey, whatever. And I went about my business. But then she said the angel came back to her, what I was assuming when she told me was the angel came to her in her dream and said, well, now you got to go protect your family because it's seen you and it's after you now. And she woke up delirious, screaming at the top of her lungs. Her husband tried to stop her and calm her down. She was like, oh no, I got to go with my brother. What's wrong? Something's wrong. And then she found out there was an accident, and it blew her mind because she couldn't believe it. And then so while this is going on now, the evil is now attacking her family because now the same sleep paralysis, astral projection that my wife, my baby mother at the time is having, her daughter is now having. They never had nothing like this going on in their life, nothing going on. But now all of a sudden, the stuff that's happening in my life is happening in her life, the same entity. That's how you know it's the same entity, because the same thing that's happening and attacking my family is now attacking her family. And she had sleep paralysis. She said she woke up, she couldn't move, and when she looked, it was an old hag. She was decrepit and she was in a corner, but she couldn't tell that from a distance. It's moved in on her closer. But she said next thing she knew, it was right up on her on the bed, like right up on her bed, right next to her, looking over her, and it looked like her skin was falling up, like decaying. And she said all she remembers is it grabbed her arm really, really hard, and she still couldn't move. And then somehow she got out of it and woke up. And she said what blew her mind was the scariest thing to her was the fact that when she woke up, she still felt the squeeze. You ever got your arm squeezed before? Really squeezed, really tight. And then the pressure gets released. You could still look down and say, man, I could still feel where the person was squeezing my arm. I could still feel it. And that's what she felt, even though it was just a dream. So my sister contacted me after this, probably within days after that we talked. And she was asking me about everything and what I remembered and if I remembered things. And there's certain things I remember and didn't remember. I did remember clearly what was going on in the hospital and the lady that came to me. So I asked my sister about the dream. I said, the lady that came to you, and I wanted her to describe to me what the lady looked like. Because if I would have told my sister the lady looked like this and she would have said, yeah, the lady looked just like that, I would have never believed what she said. I would have just said, you only saying that because I said that's, so she had to prove to me that it was the same woman. So when I talked to her and I said, so what was the lady's hair? I already knew what the lady's hair was like. And when she told me that the woman's hair was peppered, like it was supposed to be like a brunette, like a dark hair, but it had the grays mixed in with it, so it was peppered. And when she said that, I said, like, she didn't have to tell me nothing else. She said it was short hair, same exact. She described the lady to a T, middle-aged, lady, not old, not young. Hair, about neck length and peppered. When she said it, I immediately cried. I just bawled, because then in that moment I knew that it was an angel. The same angel that came to me was the same angel that was working with and went to her. So mind you, I give all these things to God, because even after I had, like, from my surgery, I had broke my leg from my knee to my ankle in 2 places. So they had to put a titanium rod in my leg. So if that didn't work, they're going to have to cut the leg off. Glory be to God, that worked. It worked out. And God even worked through the healing of my leg. I mean, in 2 days, I wasn't even using crutches. I mean, the doctor, when he went and see me a week or 2 weeks later, said he could still see the break and was like, well, where's your crutches? He was mad. I said, my leg doesn't hurt. He was grabbing and squeezing on my leg. This doesn't hurt. I said, no, it's fine. And at the time, even then, I'm still, giving myself credit, giving myself glory. Say, I heal really fast. I always heal really fast. But it was the Lord that always been healing me really fast. It was nothing that was me. And that was my turning point, and even then after that, but it was something that I knew, and I kept saying, I had friends that died, young friends that died in car accidents, friends that got shot, all different types of deaths I've been around. And I said, what makes me any different, any better than them? Because we all was down the same path. Why am I given another opportunity? And I always, and future reference, guys talked to me about that and said, you don't know how many opportunities I gave them. And I said, you're right. I don't know. I wasn't a fly on the wall their whole life. So I don't know how many opportunities they had. I just know my opportunity was here. And what's crazy is even after then, I was still living my own life. I still didn't get on. I still wasn't on the straight and narrow. I mean, that was just the precursor that started to turn things. You know, it wasn't until maybe late 2018, 2019, yeah, 2019, late 2019, before COVID, where God came to me. And I remember I was sitting around, I was like, you know, I'm gonna watch some porno. You know, because I was always into sexual and moral things, and you know, got myself ready to watch porn. What porn I was sitting there thinking, what porn I want to watch. And then out of nowhere, you know, and when God comes and talks to you, a lot of people think, oh, you know, you just hear it right here and yeah. I didn't hear it in my ears. I heard it in here. Like it was like I felt. It was like it was stronger than in my ears. You know, it was here. It was like, and it was the type of things that were being said. I don't even talk like that, so I know it wasn't myself thinking this, but it just came to me. Like I felt it so strongly in my heart. I just heard, imagine all the time you wasted watching this filth. And I said, what? What was that? Like, why would I? You know, because I was excited, I was ready to watch them, but you know, I enjoyed it. You know, at the time, that was, you know, something that passed the time. So, I said, well, you know, filth. I don't even talk like that, and you know, but what was crazy about that moment was like when God takes things from you, He takes them from you. See, because in that moment, He took that desire away. Because in that moment, I didn't even want to do it anymore. You know. And it doesn't mean that I didn't have desires or attraction to women or anything like that anymore. Or I didn't think about, you know, still didn't think about women. It was just the advocate, the actual desire to watch actual porn was gone. You know, in an instant, He took it away. I didn't have to. And I always thought it was one of my hardest battles. You know, something that it would be one of the hardest things to get removed from my life would be porn addiction. But He, in an instant, He took it away. So all He had to do was just bring that up, just say them words, and it resonated deep. And so, you know, my journey moved on from then, and you know, everything's an uphill battle, you know, and He calls it a narrow, hard to find road for a reason, because you get your eyes off Him and start looking at the world and seeing all the glamour and glitter. Oh, it look great over there. And then you go to turn, you say, well, where's the path? You lose the path. You lose your way. And so I felt it was important for me to make this video for anybody out there that has their own testimony, similar or not similar. You know, a lot of people have a lot of different crazy stories, you know. And the story I'm telling now was kind of, I mean, I'm already over been and talking about doing all this for about 20 minutes now, and you got to think that I could be talking about this and we used to be talking about it for an hour. I'm trying to cut it short and make it reasonable time length. And but I just wanted everybody to know that, you know, Jesus loves you no matter what you've done in your life. It's never going to change. His unfailing love, it doesn't matter what you do. All He wants you to do is come to Him. He's knocking at the door. He says He's knocking at the door for a reason. Just go to Him. He loves you. I love you. God bless.